What happens when you don't chase her? The psychology she'll never admit. Psychology tricks. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Eden Abez. There's a quiet turning point in almost every connection, one most men miss, because it doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives with silence. It's the moment she realizes you're not doing what she expected. Not chasing, not scrambling, not trying to win her mood. At first it looks like nothing, but inside her, something clicks into motion, attention sharpens. Curiosity wakes up. The comfort of predictability disappears. And when predictability disappears, the mind starts searching. Here's what many men get wrong. They believe the chase is what creates attraction. So they pour on effort like it's proof of value, more texts, more explanations, more reassurance, more, I hope you're not mad. They think consistency means constantly pursuing. But a woman can feel the difference between genuine interest and emotional dependence in seconds. When your energy says, I need you to respond so I can feel okay, the power shifts. And whether she admits it or not, something in her relaxes, not into love, but into control. The connection becomes predictable. The attention becomes automatic. You become safe in the wrong way. Then you stop chasing. And that's when the real psychological shift begins, not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer handing out unlimited access to your attention. You don't turn cold. You turn grounded. You don't punish her. You protect your self-respect. You don't disappear. You stop overextending. That's what changes everything. You're calm. Because when you're no longer flooding her with validation, she can't read you the same way. She can't rely on the predictable flow of reassurance. And the human brain hates uncertainty, especially when it used to feel certain. So she starts noticing details she ignored before. Why does his attention feel different now? Why isn't he reacting the way other men do? Did I misjudge how much he values himself? Is he losing interest, or is he just not attached to the outcome? Am I about to lose something I assumed was mine? Those questions create tension, and tension creates focus. Focus creates emotional investment. This is the part she rarely admits out loud. When a man is steady enough to not chase, it forces her to face the connection more honestly. Because now she can't measure your interest by how hard you pursue, she has to measure it by your standards, your boundaries, and your consistency. And that's what activates pursuit. Not because women like games, but because people chase what they can't control, what they can't fully predict, and what they feel must be earned. The deepest truth here is simple. Not chasing isn't rejecting her. It's refusing to abandon yourself for her. And when she realizes she has to choose you, rather than just receive you automatically, attraction stops being something you try to create and becomes something she experiences. Section 1. The shift in power. When you stop chasing her, the first thing that happens is not anger, not disappointment, not even relief, but confusion, a soft, internal pause she will never voice because in her mind she already mapped you out, predicted your timing, and assumed your effort would continue on schedule, that you would keep reaching, keep proving, keep leaning forward just to stay relevant in her emotional field, because this is how most interactions have trained her to think. Women, through experience and pattern recognition, build quiet expectations about men, and most men unknowingly live inside those expectations, follow the rhythm that was set before they ever noticed it, answering quickly, reassuring often, chasing harder when things feel uncertain. But the moment you stop chasing, you disrupt that rhythm and rewrite the script instantly, and that is where the real shift begins, because her mind enters unfamiliar territory, the place where certainty no longer protects her comfort, where the pattern she trusted no longer works, and this isn't about manipulation or games. It's about psychology tricks rooted in human behavior, because predictable attention removes tension. Predictable attention removes curiosity. Predictable attention removes emotional pull, and when you stop chasing, predictability collapses, assumptions lose their grip, and the emotional gravity of your absence quietly appears, not because women enjoy being pursued endlessly, but because male eagerness has become so common it blends into the background. Most men rush toward interest. Most men panic when space appears. Most men respond instantly because silence feels risky. So when you don't, you stand out without trying. And what she notices is not cruelty or coldness, but something far more unsettling and intriguing: your independence. Because not chasing reveals that you are not emotionally dependent on her reactions. You are not guided by her mood shifts. You are not acting from fear of loss, and that kind of steadiness is rare, and rare carries weight, because your silence does not elevate her above you. It invites her to look closer. It sparks curiosity instead of comfort. It moves you from the role of admirer to the role of a man who belongs to himself. And that distinction changes everything in female psychology, because attraction often grows where certainty ends. And when a woman senses a man slipping away not through drama or punishment, but through self respect, something wakes up inside her. Her attention sharpens, her emotional awareness turns inward, and suddenly she feels the imbalance she didn't notice before. Because your calm becomes a mirror, your distance becomes information, your restraint becomes clarity. And here lies the truth she will never openly admit. When you stop chasing her, she begins chasing the version of you she cannot predict, control, or easily reclaim, not because she needs validation, but because uncertainty activates curiosity, and curiosity is the bridge to emotional investment. This is not about playing hard to get or withdrawing to provoke anxiety. Don't do that. Be grounded. Be consistent with yourself. Be unavailable to chaos. That is the difference. Because silence driven by resentment pushes people away, but silence grounded in self respect pulls them closer. And this is one of the most misunderstood psychology tricks in modern dating, because men are taught to pursue harder when interest feels fragile, when in reality, the most powerful move is often to pause, to let space speak, to allow absence to do what words cannot. And when you do this correctly, you are not rejecting her, you are revealing yourself. Revealing that your life does not orbit her approval, that your time has value, that your presence is a choice, and in the landscape of female psychology, choice is magnetic because it signals abundance, stability, and depth. And if you want to understand how to fall in love without losing yourself, you must internalize this. Don't chase unpredictability. Don't reward mixed signals. Don't confuse effort with attachment. Be steady. Be clear. Be rooted. That is how to fall in love in a way that feels grounded instead of draining. Because the goal is not to make her anxious. The goal is to make her aware. Aware that you are not easily owned, not easily replaced, not easily read. And when awareness replaces assumption, attraction has room to grow. This is why psychology tricks work best when they align with truth, not performance, and why understanding female psychology is less about tactics and more about presence, because presence without pursuit carries quiet authority. And authority without force feels safe and compelling, and when she feels that, she doesn't chase you out of fear. She moves toward you out of curiosity, respect, and desire. And that is how to fall in love without begging for it, without forcing it, without losing your center. Because your silence was never rejection, it was revelation, and revelation changes everything. Section 2. The emotional gap. The moment you stop chasing, an emotional gap appears, and it does not come from coldness or calculation, but from contrast, the kind of contrast the human mind cannot ignore, the contrast between attention and silence, between effort and neutrality, between the man she assumed you were and the man standing in front of her now, because humans notice what disappears, and women are especially attuned to emotional shifts, even the quiet ones, even the ones no one names out loud. So at first she may say she doesn't care. She may claim she enjoys space. She may even convince herself that nothing has changed. But internally something tightens, because tension forms where certainty once lived, and tension creates focus, sharp focus, the kind that turns inward. Because women don't chase simply because you pull away, they move because absence forces emotional confrontation. It removes autopilot. It removes comfort. It asks questions the mind can't avoid, and suddenly the attention she once took for granted feels valuable. The validation she barely noticed now feels earned, and your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was, not because you mattered more when you left, but because silence creates room for reflection, and reflection reshapes perception. This is why silence is powerful when it comes from self control, not resentment, because it doesn't push her away, it pulls her inward toward her own thoughts, her own reactions, her own assumptions, and questions begin to surface naturally, quietly. Persistently, why did he slow down? Did I push too far? Is he losing interest? These questions don't diminish her, don't confuse her, don't make her fragile. They activate her awareness because awareness is movement. Awareness is engagement. Awareness is where attraction is born, and this is where many men misunderstand the process. Thinking distance works because it creates anxiety, but that is not the point. The real shift happens because your absence magnifies your value, your silence magnifies mystery, your composure magnifies confidence, and people instinctively move toward what they sense they might lose, not out of panic, but out of clarity. Don't confuse chasing with care. Be clear about that. Constant effort without space dulls meaning. Constant availability dulls desire. When you stop chasing, you create a gap that doesn't make her desperate, it makes her aware, and awareness changes how she sees you, because now she has to reconcile two images: the man who is always there and the man who chooses when to be there, and choice carries weight, especially when it is calm and unannounced, because calm distance signals a man who is grounded in himself, a high value man not because he withdraws, but because he does not overextend, and this is where many men between 35 and 70 finally recognize the difference between effort and presence, because presence without need feels solid, feels intentional, feels mature. Be careful here. Don't disappear to provoke. Don't go silent to punish. That is not the lesson. Be steady. Be composed. Be consistent with your standards. When your energy shifts from pursuit to self-respect, the emotional gap forms naturally, and within that gap, attraction has space to breathe, because masculine energy is not loud or frantic. It is calm, directed, and rooted. And when that energy replaces urgency, women feel it immediately, even if they cannot explain it, because what they feel is contrast, the sharp difference between being chased and being chosen. That is why absence forces emotional confrontation. It removes the background noise of constant attention and leaves only what matters. It makes her reevaluate. It makes her reassess. It makes her feel the value of connection instead of assuming it will always be there. This is not a trick played on women. It is a psychological response to contrast, and understanding this allows you to attract women without manipulation, without pressure, without losing your center, because you are no longer acting from fear of losing her. You are acting from alignment with yourself. That is what separates a man who hopes to be wanted from a high-value man who expects mutual effort. You must understand this clearly. Attraction grows in awareness, not in excess. Interest deepens in space, not in pursuit. When you stop chasing, the emotional gap becomes a mirror, showing her where she stands and showing you where you stand. And this clarity is powerful because it filters out illusion, and when illusion fades, real connection either strengthens or falls away. And both outcomes serve you. Be grounded in that truth. Masculine energy thrives in restraint, not withdrawal, in intention, not reaction. When you embody that, you naturally attract women who respond to presence rather than pressure. This is not about playing roles or memorizing lines. It is about understanding how emotional value is created, how silence speaks, how absence sharpens focus, and how composure communicates confidence without a single word. Don't chase comfort. Be the man who allows contrast to work. That is how you attract women with depth, how you maintain your dignity, and how you step fully into the identity of a high-value man whose energy is felt long after he stops speaking, because when awareness replaces assumption, attraction has no choice but to awaken. If this message hit home, don't just nod and move on, claim it. Drop a comment right now saying, "I don't chase. I choose." Like this video, subscribe for more clear, grounded psychology that puts you back in control, and remind yourself every day, silence isn't absence. It's awareness, and awareness creates attraction. Section 3. The activation of pursuit. When you stop chasing, Something profound shifts, and it has nothing to do with tactics and everything to do with human nature, because pursuit awakens only when value is no longer freely handed out. And this is where most men finally understand what Old Stoic wisdom has taught for centuries. What is always available is rarely respected, but what stands firm without begging commands attention. So when you step back with calm strength, not anger, not silence as punishment, but grounded self. Respect, uncertainty quietly enters her mind. Not insecurity, uncertainty, and uncertainty is the spark that reignites curiosity. Because as Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And when your thoughts shift from chasing to choosing, your entire presence changes, your messages slow, your availability narrows, your life becomes full again, and suddenly she feels the gap where your attention used to be, and that gap creates motion, because most men never experience a woman leaning in since they never stop leaning forward themselves. But the moment you reclaim your pace, she begins to test, not with drama, but with subtle signals. She texts first, responds with intention, asks questions that go deeper, mirrors your effort, watches your reactions, and these are not games, they are micro pursuits, quiet, consistent, curious, the kind of pursuit many men miss because they expect loud declarations instead of steady investment. And when you know, longer chase, she stops measuring you as an option and starts sensing the possibility of losing you, which shifts her internal frame completely, because attraction grows in space, not pressure, and Epictetus said it clearly. He who is not a slave to his desires is free, and freedom is magnetic, especially in modern life where attention is cheap and distraction is endless. So when you stop chasing, you are not withdrawing love, you are restoring balance, you are signaling that your time, energy, and focus are earned, not assumed, and that activates respect before anything else. Respect for your boundaries, respect for your mission, respect for the fact that your life moves forward with or without approval. And this is where iron mind thinking separates men who drift from men who lead their own lives, because an iron mind does not react emotionally to silence, delays, or mixed signals. It stays steady, it stays purposeful, it stays busy building. And that steadiness becomes a mirror she cannot ignore, because as Maya Angelou famously said, people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And when you stop chasing, you make her feel the weight of your absence without a single argument. And that feeling is powerful because it invites her to invest voluntarily, not defensively, not strategically, but authentically. And this is how Stoicism shows up in real relationships, not by control, but by composure, not by pressure, but by presence. And in today's world where many men overexplain, overtext, and overgive in hopes of being chosen, the man who knows when to step back stands out immediately because he is not trying to convince anyone of his worth. He is living it, and when she senses that your energy is no longer chasing but choosing, she softens naturally, she invests emotionally, she becomes more consistent, and games lose their purpose, because games only exist when value is unclear and your clarity removes the need for them. So the instruction is simple and decisive. Stop chasing, start leading your life again, fill your schedule with purpose, health, discipline, and growth. Respond warmly, but without urgency. Give attention without attachment. And remember that attraction is not created by pursuit, it is revealed by restraint. And this principle, rooted in Old Stoic wisdom, has not aged because human psychology has not changed, only the environment has, and men who master this today gain an advantage quietly, because Stoicism win is not loud, it is effective, and when your iron mind stays calm, focused, and forward-moving, you stop worrying about who is watching and start becoming the man worth watching. And that is when pursuit, respect, and connection follow naturally, without force, without fear, and without compromise. Section 4. The collapse of her ego. When you stop chasing, something subtle yet seismic happens, and it has nothing to do with hurting her feelings or trying to prove a point, because this moment is not about confidence shattering or drama erupting. It is about her ego quietly losing the foundation it once stood on, the foundation of certainty, the certainty that you would always be there, always respond, always lean in first. And when that certainty disappears, control doesn't explode. It evaporates, and that is far more powerful because she suddenly realizes your attention was not a permanent fixture. It was a choice, and now that choice is no longer being offered on demand. And that realization forces a kind of self reflection that arguments never achieve. Because when a man leaves loudly, when he pleads, complains, explains, or storms off, her focus stays on the noise. But when he leaves quietly, when he stays composed, grounded, and emotionally self contained, her focus turns inward, and that is where the real shift begins. She starts replaying moments in her mind, not the dramatic ones, but the small ones, the times she didn't reciprocate effort, the moments she assumed rather than appreciated, the signals she dismissed because she believed you would stay anyway. And this is not pain, not guilt, not fear. It is clarity, and clarity is far more transformative than discomfort, because clarity strips away illusion without attacking identity. And in female psychology, that is when genuine desire has room to grow, because the ego was never about arrogance. It was about predictability, and predictability is comfortable, but it is not inspiring, so don't chase. Don't explain yourself into exhaustion. Don't seek validation from someone who has not yet realized its value. Be calm. Be consistent with your boundaries. Be respectful but unavailable in the way that signals self-respect rather than resentment. That is the psychology trick most men miss. They think absence is a tactic, but absence without composure is just distance, and distance without dignity creates nothing, whereas presence withdrawn with calm intention creates space, and space invites thought. And thought leads to reevaluation, and reevaluation is where attraction reawakens. Because when she can no longer rely on automatic attention, she must assess her own behavior, her own effort, her own level of investment, and that assessment happens privately, quietly, honestly, which is why this moment is so powerful. She notices the silence, not as rejection, but as a mirror, and in that mirror she sees the dynamic as it truly was, not as she assumed it would always be, and that is why the ego collapses not in chaos, but in stillness. Because stillness removes distractions, and without distractions, truth becomes unavoidable. You must understand this is not about manipulation, it is about alignment. It is about refusing to overextend yourself in hopes of being chosen, and instead choosing yourself consistently, because that is how to fall in love in a way that lasts, not by convincing someone, but by allowing them to discover, and discovery always feels more meaningful than persuasion. So be steady, be patient, don't rush the process. Don't interrupt her reflection with mixed signals or sudden emotional reversals. Let the clarity do its work, because clarity leads to genuine pursuit, not reactive attention, and genuine pursuit feels different. It comes with intention, curiosity, and renewed effort. And this is where psychology tricks are often misunderstood. They are not shortcuts. They are observations of how human nature responds to certainty versus mystery. And in female psychology, mystery paired with emotional safety is deeply compelling, not because it creates anxiety, but because it restores balance. It reminds her that connection is mutual, not assumed, and when that balance returns, interest has room to deepen naturally. So don't announce your withdrawal. Don't make speeches. Don't frame yourself as a lesson. That is unnecessary. Your calm consistency speaks louder than words ever could, and that is the irony. The less you chase, the more space you create for her to choose. And choice is the birthplace of authentic desire, which is why this moment, this quiet shift, is not an ending but a recalibration. And if she steps forward, it will not be because she felt pressured, but because she saw clearly, and clarity changes everything. This is how to fall in love without forcing it. This is how attraction matures. And this is why the most effective psychology tricks are not tricks at all. They are simply the discipline to step back, stay grounded, and let truth surface on its own, again and again. Because when certainty disappears, authenticity finally has room to enter, and that is where real connection begins. If this message hit home, don't just watch and move on. Take a stand. Like the video, share it with a man who needs this reminder, and subscribe for more real insights on attraction and psychology. Most importantly, comment this sentence below to lock it in your mind and make it real. I don't chase for attention, I step back and let clarity create desire. Section 5. The fear of loss. Every woman carries a quiet fear, often unspoken even to herself, and it is not the fear of being alone, not the fear of rejection, but the fear of losing a man who is truly valuable, a man who is not needy, not desperate, not grasping for reassurance, but calm, self-sufficient, and independent, the kind of man whose presence feels steady rather than demanding. And when you stop chasing, this fear does not explode into drama. It awakens slowly, subtly, as discomfort. Because comfort was built on certainty, and certainty has now been removed. Don't underestimate this moment. Be aware of its power. That is when the dynamic begins to change. When your attention is no longer automatic, when your messages are no longer predictable, when your emotional energy is no longer always leaning forward, her nervous system notices the shift, not as panic, but as awareness. And awareness reintroduces challenge, and challenge reawakens desire in a way comfort never could. You must understand this is not about playing games. It is about restoring balance. In female psychology, value is often measured not by what is given freely, but by what must be chosen, and when you stop chasing, you remind her that you are a choice, not a guarantee. Your silence becomes meaningful, not cold, not punishing, but intentional, and intention carries weight. She begins to lean in slightly, not because she is afraid, but because she is curious. She becomes warmer, more intentional, more invested, because people instinctively value what isn't guaranteed, what can be lost, what requires presence rather than assumption. This is where many men get it wrong. They believe effort must be constant to attract women, but effort without boundaries drains attraction over time. Be calm, be grounded, be consistent with yourself. That is masculine energy in its most stable form, not loud, not performative, but unmistakable. A high-value man does not announce his worth. He demonstrates it through restraint, through emotional regulation, through the quiet confidence of knowing he can walk away if alignment is lost. And when your calm communicates that one truth clearly, everything shifts. You can walk away, not in anger, not in protest, but in peace. And that single realization changes her entire approach. She listens differently. She engages differently. She evaluates her own behavior with more honesty. Because now the outcome is no longer guaranteed. Don't chase explanations. Don't over-clarify your intentions. Don't rush to fix emotional distance. Be steady. Be respectful. Be unavailable in the way that signals self-respect, not indifference. That is how high-value man moves through relationships, and that is why masculine energy creates attraction without force. It invites rather than demands. This fear of loss is not something you need to trigger aggressively. It arises naturally when you stop overgiving, when you stop filling every silence, when you stop proving your value through constant effort. She begins to sense that you are not dependent on her response to feel whole, and paradoxically, that independence is what allows her to feel drawn closer. Because attraction thrives where freedom exists. People want what chooses them freely, not what attaches itself out of necessity. That is a core truth if you want to attract women in a way that lasts beyond novelty. You must also understand that this shift does not happen overnight. It unfolds in moments, in pauses, in subtle changes of tone and behavior. She may reach out more. She may ask more questions. She may offer more of herself emotionally, or she may simply become more present. All of that signals the same thing. The fear of loss has activated awareness, and awareness creates intention. Don't rush the process. Don't punish her with silence. Don't test her with withdrawal. Simply remain consistent with your boundaries and values. That consistency is what defines a high-value man far more than charm or confidence ever could. Masculine energy is not about control. It is about direction. It is about knowing where you stand and being willing to walk away from what does not align. When she senses that direction, she adjusts. not because she feels threatened, but because she respects clarity. Clarity feels safe, and safety paired with challenge is deeply attractive. This is how you attract women without chasing them. This is how desire is allowed to grow rather than being forced into existence. So don't chase reassurance. Be present without overextending. Don't negotiate your worth. Be grounded in it. That is the lesson hidden inside the fear of loss. When you stop chasing, you don't lose connection. You redefine it. And in that redefinition, attraction has room to breathe, deepen, and become intentional. That is how a high value man is felt, not explained. That is how masculine energy shapes dynamics without words. And that is how you attract women who choose you not out of comfort, but out of genuine desire again and again. Section 6. The mirror effect. She confronts herself. When you stop chasing, a quiet shift takes place that most people never see coming, and this is where the real psychology begins. You become a mirror, not by doing more, but by doing less, and in modern life where constant messaging, notifications, and emotional noise dominate every interaction, this silence stands out like a signal flare. Without your steady reassurance, your predictable attention, or your habitual pursuit, she is left face to face with her own thoughts, her own emotions, her own assumptions, and the distractions fade. The external feedback loop breaks, and what remains is introspection. Because human beings, as Carl Jung famously said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And when you are no longer chasing, you are no longer absorbing that irritation or soothing that uncertainty for her. So the mind turns inward and starts asking questions it usually avoids. Questions like why the energy changed, why the effort stopped, why the pattern broke, and instead of you being the subject under the microscope, she becomes the one examining her own behavior, her own expectations, her own emotional habits. This is the mirror effect. And it is powerful precisely because it is passive, because the brain relies heavily on external validation to stabilize identity. And when that validation disappears, the mind scrambles to fill the gap, searching for meaning, searching for explanation, searching for closure. And this is not manipulation. This is psychology. This is how attention works. This is how value is perceived. And this is how absence creates focus, a principle echoed by Marcus Aurelius when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength, and that strength is what you are demonstrating when you stop chasing, because you are no longer reacting, no longer proving, no longer negotiating your worth through effort. You are standing still, grounded, self-contained, operating from Old Stoic wisdom that teaches a man to be steady rather than frantic, deliberate rather than reactive, calm rather than compulsive, and this calm creates contrast in a world addicted to stimulation, the unresolved. Question becomes louder than any message you could send. The unanswered silence becomes heavier than constant availability, and the mind, which hates loose ends, keeps returning to you not because you are pursuing, but because you have become the unanswered equation, the variable that no longer behaves as expected. And this is where Stoicism win becomes more than a phrase. It becomes a lived advantage, because you are not trying to provoke thought, yet thought is provoked. You are not trying to be missed, yet you are noticed. You are not trying to control outcomes, yet outcomes begin to shift. And for men between 35 and 70 navigating modern relationships, this lesson is critical. Chasing is not strength. It is anxiety in motion. Restraint is not withdrawal. It is self-respect expressed through discipline, and discipline is attractive because it signals an iron mind, a man who is not ruled by impulse, who does not overextend himself for approval, who understands that his value is not established by pursuit but by presence. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And what you are doing here is choosing composure over compulsion, clarity over confusion, direction over drift. And this choice forces a psychological recalibration in the other person, because when the usual script no longer plays, self-reflection becomes unavoidable. In practical terms, this means you stop over-explaining you. Stop filling silence with nervous effort. You stop offering emotional labor without reciprocity, and you refocus on your own mission, your health, your purpose, your standards, because modern life rewards men who are centered, not men who are scattered. And this is where old Stoic wisdom intersects with contemporary reality, reminding you that peace is leverage, boundaries are power, and self command is magnetic. Repeat this lesson until it sticks. You do not chase clarity, you embody it. You do not chase attention, you attract it through consistency. You do not chase validation, you generate it internally. And when you do, the mirror effect activates naturally, making others confront their own assumptions without you saying a word. This is Stoicism win in action, not loud, not aggressive, not performative, but firm, grounded, and unmistakable. And as Seneca said, he who is brave is free, free from the need to pursue, free from the need to convince, free from the need to be constantly chosen. And that freedom is felt, sensed, and respected. Cultivate the iron mind that stays steady under uncertainty. Repeat the principles of old Stoic wisdom until they become instinct. Let Stoicism win guide your decisions. And watch how restraint reshapes perception, because the ultimate victory is not in being chased or chasing back. It is in mastering yourself, mastering your reactions, mastering your direction, and walking forward knowing that when you stop chasing, you start leading, and leadership always leaves a reflection behind. If you made it this far, you already understand what most men never do. Power shifts the moment you stop chasing and let silence do the work. You no longer explain yourself. You no longer seek validation. You become the mirror that forces reflection. That's the turning point. That's where self-mastery begins. If this message hit home, don't stay silent, declare it. Go to the comments and write this sentence exactly. I stopped chasing, and I became the unanswered question. Section 7. The redefinition of your value. When you chase, you send a clear signal without realizing it. You are always available, always reachable, always ready to lean forward one step more. And while that may feel generous, it quietly flattens your value. When you stop chasing, something far more powerful happens, because not chasing communicates selectivity, intention, and self-trust, and that shift changes everything in the psychological landscape between you and her. Be clear about this. Effort does not define value. Choice does. The moment you stop measuring yourself by how much energy you pour in, your worth begins to be defined by something deeper, your ability to stand still, to pause, to walk away if needed. That is where psychology tricks rooted in human behavior quietly take over. People, regardless of gender, instinctively place higher value on what is scarce, self-directed, and not dependent on approval, and this principle sits at the heart of female psychology even when it is rarely spoken aloud. When you step back, you don't disappear, you reframe yourself. Your restraint becomes the message. Instead of appearing as someone hoping to be chosen, you are now perceived as someone who chooses, someone whose time and attention are not automatic but intentional. Don't underestimate the shift. It moves you out of the category of background noise and into the category of consideration. You are no longer the steady presence waiting patiently for validation. You become the unanswered question, the variable she did not account for, the possibility that can no longer be taken for granted. That subtle tension matters. It introduces contrast, and contrast creates focus. When your attention is no longer guaranteed, it becomes noticeable, and notice is the doorway to emotional engagement, to curiosity, to how to fall in love in ways that feel natural rather than forced. Be honest with yourself here. This is not about playing games or pulling strings behind the scenes. Don't manipulate. Don't pretend. This is about alignment. When you stop chasing, the dynamic has room to rebalance on its own terms. If genuine interest exists, it doesn't vanish. It rises to the surface, clearer and cleaner, because there is space for it to move. If interest does not exist, something equally valuable appears: clarity. Confusion fades. Mixed signals lose their grip. You are no longer spending emotional energy decoding silence or overanalyzing pauses. That is a win, even if it doesn't feel like one at first. You must understand that walking away from chasing is not walking away from connection, it is walking towards self respect. And self respect changes how others respond to you without you ever needing to announce it. In female psychology, respect and attraction often grow from observing how a man treats his own time, boundaries, and attention. When you don't chase, you demonstrate that your life has structure, direction, and meaning beyond the outcome of one interaction. That observation alone can shift perception. Suddenly, you are not just present, you are a standard. Not an unreachable one, but a grounded one. Someone she may realize she needs to meet rather than manage. And here is the quiet truth many overlook. The fear of loss is far more compelling than the comfort of certainty. When you are always there, always pushing forward, you remove the possibility of loss, and with it, the emotional charge that keeps connection alive. When you step back, you don't create pressure, you create perspective. She begins to see what your absence would feel like, not because you threaten it, but because you calmly allow it to be an option. That is one of the most understated psychology tricks in human connection. It works not because it is clever, but because it is honest. You are simply refusing to abandon yourself for attention. Be grounded. Be patient. Be willing to let outcomes reveal themselves. This mindset aligns naturally with how to fall in love in a way that is mutual, balanced, and real, rather than strained or one-sided. And as this shift settles in, something profound happens internally as well. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop auditioning. You stop proving. Your energy stabilizes, and that stability is felt even when nothing is said. That is why not chasing often speaks louder than any pursuit ever could. It communicates confidence without noise, intention without force, and value without explanation. In the end, this is the final psychological shift. By choosing not to chase, you reclaim your self-respect, and in doing so, you allow your value to stand on its own, shaped by choice rather than effort, guided by clarity rather than anxiety, and aligned with the deeper rhythms of female psychology and authentic connection. Hey friends, thanks for staying till the end. Here's the simple truth: real value doesn't need to beg for attention. The moment you stop chasing, you stop communicating neediness and start communicating self-respect. And that shift changes everything. Respect isn't built by over-explaining or over-giving. It's built by restraint, clarity, and choosing yourself first. So take this seriously. Don't just understand it, act on it. Apply it in how you show up, how you set boundaries, and how you value your time. Because knowledge without action changes nothing. Enroll once, grow forever.